man became sickable when he fell from glory. So there is a legitimate ground upon which sickness gained permission to begin to attack men. And this is what Paul taught us in Romans 5:12, 15 and 17. The reason why men became sickable, able to be sick. The reason why. Paul was telling us that men were not sickable. Men could not be sick. Men could not be attacked by sickness. The reason why men started becoming susceptible to sickness, there was a legal ground. And so in Romans 5:12, it says, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world. I want to show you the basis for sickness, the basis for healing. You need to understand that sickness does not just happen. Sickness did not have the right and the jurisdiction to invade the human race. It wasn't permitted. When Adam was in the garden, he was never sick, because sickness does not just happen. There has to be a legal premise for the allowance of sickness to be able to attach itself to a human person. This is why men could become sick. And then when that legal premise is removed, it also becomes illegal for a man to be sick, because a man was not created to be sick. A man was created to live in the realm of glory. And I have taught you that glory in this context means living exactly like God. In Genesis 1:26, the Bible said, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And he said, let them have dominion. So he was created to function in the realm of dominion. And that realm of dominion is the realm of glory, because this dominion is not just about activities. It is first of all about being. It's about who he is, then what he does. Dominion does not begin with what you can do. Dominion begins with who you are. That's why God made man in his image, in his likeness, and he said he should have dominion. So if a man does not become, he cannot manifest. If you study John chapter 1 from verse 10 to verse 14, the Bible said he came into the world, although the world was made by him, the world knew him not. He said, but as many as he came in unto his own received him not. He said, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become the sons of God. So every time God encounters a man, he's first of all interested in his being before his manifestation. Because your being is actually a call to glory. And when the man fell and was denatured, the Bible said he fell from glory. He didn't say he lost capacity for manifestation. Manifestation was a byproduct of his being. The moment he denatured, he lost the ability for manifestation. In Romans 6:23, it says, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. He has fallen short. So he was created to live in glory. And glory in this context is not him receiving praises for manifestation. God is the one who will always take praise. Glory in this context means he was created to model God, to live like God. So whatever could not happen to God should not happen to the man. Things that don't happen to God began to happen to the man when he fell. He fell from glory. He fell from the divine nature. He fell from the divine life. He fell from the divine order of existence. In 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 3, it said, according as his divine power, he has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him that called us to glory. Peter is telling us that we were born, we were created to live in glory. And then he went to verse 4 and showed us what it meant to live in glory. He said, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises. He said that by this we might become partakers of his divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. So Peter is telling us that glorified existence is God existence, functioning in the nature and in the class of God. And you know, if you are in that class, you can't be sick, because by that nature and that class, sickness can't exist there. Failure can't exist there. You can't be dominated there. You can't be helpless there. In the God realm and in the God class, dominion is natural over sickness, over devils, over circumstances. Man became sickable when he fell from glory. So there is a legitimate ground upon which sickness gained permission to begin to attack men. And this is what Paul taught us in Romans 5:12, 15 and 17. The reason why men became sickable, able to be sick. The reason why. Paul was telling us that men were not sickable. Men could not be sick. Men could not be attacked by sickness. The reason why men started becoming susceptible to sickness, there was a legal ground. And so in Romans 5:12, it says, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. So it was sin that legitimized death, and death is sickness inclusive. And he said, when death entered the world, death passed on to all men, for that all have sinned. That means if sin didn't enter the world, death wouldn't have access into the world. And if death didn't enter into the world, death would not have been passed to men. So the reason why men could receive sickness and death was because sin entered the world. And the reason sin entered the world was because Adam, through rebellion, opened the door. So sin and sicknesses legitimization in afflicting a human person is not that the person is weak. The legitimization of sickness is that sin has passed to men and death came by sin. So if there is no sin, there's no death. And if there's no death, there'll be no sickness. So this is the legal ground. If you read verse 15, Paul now began to introduce that the same way there is a legal ground for sin, there's for sickness and death, there's also a legal ground for healthy living. So when we are talking about a person being sick or healthy, it's about spiritual legalities. It's not about whether the person is sick or is strong or not strong. It's not about whether the person exercises or not. It's not about whether the person rests or not. All of those things are good. But when we are talking sickness and health, these are spiritual legalities. The legal ground for sickness is sin. The legal ground for death is sin. So when sin is taken care of, sickness shouldn't have right to function. Are you following? So Paul told us in verse 15, he said, but not as the offense, so also is the free gift. He said, for if through the offense of one, many be dead. He's still talking about the rebellion of Adam. Paul is telling us that the reason most of us die, most of us fall sick, he said, is because of the offense of Adam. So he said, if by the offense of one, Adam, many be dead, he said, how much more the grace of God and how much more the grace of God and the gift by grace, which is by one man, Jesus Christ, had abounded unto many. If many people can be sick, if many people can die because of the offense of one man, can you imagine the grace that many more should have because of the obedience of Jesus? So Paul is telling us that the obedience of Jesus is superior to the disobedience of Adam. And so also the grace and the enablement that Jesus brought is superior to the weakness of death that Adam's sin brought. Verse 17, Paul now made us understand that this grace, we didn't just receive it in bits and pieces. He said, for the sin of one man, Adam, caused death. Are you seeing? Caused death to rule over many. He said, but even greater in God's wonderful grace and his gift of righteousness, for all who received it, we live in triumph over sin and death through one man, Jesus Christ. So the ground for which sickness entered the realm of men was the disobedience of Adam. So you are not sick because you ate bad food. Jesus said if you eat any deadly thing, it shouldn't hurt you. You are not sick because you didn't exercise. You are not sick because you didn't rest. Now, don't get me wrong. All these things are important. But you are sick because Adam sinned. And when Adam sinned, he legitimized sickness to attack your body. Paul is telling us that now that Jesus has obeyed God, he has also illegitimized sickness. So sickness shouldn't attack you anymore. So the basis for health and sickness are legalities of the spirit realm. And the good news tonight is that the legal premise for health is superior to the legal premise for sickness. If you go to Isaiah 53 from verse 4, you are going to see what Jesus did in practical terms in order to remove and erode the power of sickness. It says, yet it was our weaknesses he carried. It was our sorrows that weighed him down. And we thought his troubles were a punishment from God, a punishment of his own sins. He said we thought God was punishing him for sinning. He never sinned. He said it was our weaknesses he carried. So if he carried your weakness, it means there's no legal ground for you to carry it anymore. He wasn't carrying his own weakness. He didn't have any weakness. It was our sorrows he carried. So if he carried our sorrows, there is no legal ground for us to carry sorrows anymore. In verse 5, he now began to break it down. He said he was pierced for our rebellion, crushed for our sins, beaten so we could be whole, and he was stripped so that we could be healed. So he specified it in case you think it's a vague statement. No, he was pierced for my rebellion. So there is no record that rebellion can present in the spirit for which I'll be burdened or be enslaved. He said he was crushed for my sins. So there's no testimony in the spiritual realm anymore that will give sin legal ground for death to rule over me. He was crushed for my sins. And he didn't just deal with the cause. He dealt with the problem as well. He said he was beaten so that I'll be made whole. And he said he was whipped so that I will be healed. And when Peter looked back in dealing with this, in 1 Peter 2:24, Peter discussed it in past tense. That means it has already been perfected. As far as Peter was concerned, you will not be healed. Peter said you are already healed, because that's how God sees you. You are already healed. He personally carried our sins in his body on the cross so that we can be dead to sin and live for what is right. And he said by his wounds we are healed. So if you are sick, your challenge should not be, what did I do? Can I get well? What did I do and can I get well? Are no longer questions. Because the reason you found yourself in sickness in the first place was not because of you. It was because of Adam. Adam was the one who gave legal ground to sin so that death can rule over you. And when Jesus came, Jesus went to the foundation and cancelled what Adam did so that the legal ground for which sin had, for which sickness have to attack you is removed. So if there is any feeling you have now that is called sickness, that feeling no longer has legal ground to be in your body. That's why we are going to approach you with authority and say be healed. We are going to approach you with authority and command cancer to get out. If there was a legal ground, we won't have the authority to command cancer. You know why? If we tell cancer get out, cancer can say why? I came here because something happened. If you tell a devil to get out, the devil could say why? But now when you say cancer go, he has no choice, because there's no premise, there's no legality. This is the understanding that you must have.